Okay, we're going to continue our discussion of the influence of region on the phonological features that are used in speaking. Um, Beyond Amy Walker's examples, we can talk a little bit more about how particular features of varieties of English are limited geographically. For some more examples, we can look at this really amazing map of North American English dialects. There's a blog review that I've pointed you to here, which I completely agree with. The review points out that Ashman is not a linguist. He does things his own way, but maybe sometimes that's for the better. So, you know, we'll all have our own takes on this dialect map, I think. But it is awesome. I think that's clear. One thing that's idiosyncratic about it is that it's just one big web page with all this information that's not always easy to get to. But here's the map. And within the map, we can see how particular features are limited to a particular environment. Now, this work was heavily influenced by, as Ashman points out, by the work of William Leboff and his colleagues at Penn, the Atlas of North American English, and we'll be talking some more about that work later on in the course. But just to get a sense of how this map works, you can see that let's see, the pin-pen merger is indicated by by this border around an area, and so we can find that this border exists in this area down in the south. Another border that we can find. So here are some other features. The double hatch here. So you see across all this area. This is the area in which we have the cot merger. Now, you might have already noticed that I am a Canadian English speaker. I grew up right around here in Kingston, Ontario, and this area is full of speakers who do not make any difference between COT and CAUGHT. This area down here is in the west, and again, this is an area where we have a merger between these two vowels. The places that don't have the hatching are places that generally maintain the distinction. I'm just going to take a minute now to share an anecdote with you about cot and cot. When I moved down here, so down to Western Massachusetts, I was looking for an apartment, and I was talking to a potential landlord and told him that I had a cat. And he said, okay. And it took us a while to figure out that we just misunderstood one another. I was telling him that I had a CAT, which I thought was relevant information for him. He thought I was telling him that I had a COT, and he didn't know why it was relevant that I slept on a cot. So this is a great thing to have a look at. I'm going to post a quick exercise for you as well about to give you a chance to play around a little bit with the map. One of the things that's really nice too is that there's all sorts of further notes that Ashman has made about various things about the pronunciation of English, and there are all the audio samples here, and again, it's not always easy to find things when you're looking through here, but right after the audio samples. There's this discussion of the pronunciation of ALM, OLK, and ALK. Now, I can tell you that when I started teaching phonology, I followed what was in phonology textbooks, which would tell you that, often tells you that these endings of words, and words like balm or folk or chalk, that there is no the remnant of the L, the L sound. I think, based on what he says here and based on the listening that I did, I think that's not actually correct. I think there actually is an L for some speakers, as he says. And so I think back to some students who might have come up to me and said, I'm sure there's an L, and me telling them, no, there's really not. Yeah, so anyway, I think we can move on from Ashman's map now to other aspects of region. I should say that there's been a lot of interest in regional dialect variation on the internet. And there was this thing called accent tag on YouTube that you might have seen. And a lot of that was derived from this online survey that a linguist named Bert Vox did. Now, we just looked at this pretty ugly map of Ashman's. Here is a map that is quite beautiful. It was made by Joshua Katz, a PhD student in statistics at North Carolina State University, and it was showing the spread of different varieties according to the data that Vox and his colleagues had gathered. Problem was that people would generally attribute this.
What do you put on your pancakes, all right? Do you put syrup or syrup?
Syrup.
Those kinds of questions are the focus of an interesting new research project from Joshua Katz, a PhD student at North Carolina State University. He's looking at regional accent.
Right. So this Today's Show presentation and many other presentations misattributed the research. The actual research on how people pronounced words was done by Bert Vox in his survey. Another thing before we move on from our overview of regions I'd like to point out is that regional variation in African American English has really been underexplored and is generally left out of the dialect maps. We're going to be discussing regional variation in African American English in some detail in the section of the course that talks about Southern English and African American English. And I'll point out to you right away that we're lucky to have as a colleague here in our department, Lisa Green, who is one of the people who has really done a lot of the pioneering work on differences between regional varieties of African American English. And we'll talk a little bit about why linguists for a while missed this. I think part of the reason they missed it is because there are a lot more similarities amongst the distinctive parts of African American English across different areas than one sees in the spread of other varieties in the United States and elsewhere.